Hey, Stuart. Okay, so you say you worked on your X step in your power pocket, got from 250 to 290. That's excellent. X step and power pocket. Yeah, I don't really get a good still on your power pocket here, but it looks decent. I'm not sure what you did to your X step, but let's see what we can do. So you walk in with a decent amount of speed. Decent meaning like probably too much. You're starting off the back of the tee pad. You're taking pretty big steps. You do a very nicely executed hop on your X step. But now here we have a problem because all of your weight was nice and up in a way that is not bad, but now all of your weight is going down into that foot. So let's watch that a few times just so you can see what I'm talking about. Like, so you're well, actually here there's another thing I can do. So as you come into your X, so like I say the hop was nicely executed, like it looked smooth, but now we can see a problem. So because of your postural alignment here, I can tell that according to physics, you have to be slowing down at this point, right? If you were upright, like, right, imagine someone riding a unicycle, if that's a thing you're familiar with. If the unicycle is here and the person is upright, they are coasting or standing perfectly still. They are not accelerating or decelerating. If the wheel is here and the weight of the person is backwards, they have to be decelerating. They have to be slowing down. The only way to be in balance here is if you're slowing down. And then the opposite, if they're tipped forward, they have to be accelerating or actively falling. So I know here that you are slowing down your momentum. So you had too much momentum, now you're slowing down, and then you're going to continue to slow down. So look at your head motion. It goes up, down, up, down, up. Not that that's not necessarily right, but you're dropping too much weight and too much energy into that rear leg. You're dissipating all your momentum by lowering into this knee that much, right? You're also probably reaching back too far here, and you're probably getting the disc too far behind you. So it looks like the disc is here, your torso is in the way of your target. So rather than reaching here, reach out more. So, and this spine lean is bad too. So stay upright here. That will move the reach back from here to there. And then instead of reaching back, you're going to reach kind of out and down. So the disc will be probably a little bit lower and definitely more not behind you, but out on not quite a 45-degree angle, but like 30 or 35. So your shoulder, if this is your center line on your spine, your shoulder will be a little bit lower. And right here, we can get into shoulder coil stuff. Josh from Overthrow has a really good video about shoulder coil, but maybe we shouldn't do that yet. So up to you. But your shoulder should be there. We should be able to see a little bit of your back, and the disc should be out on this line. That will help keep you more centered a little bit. So your momentum, you dropped on your X step, you're leaning on your X step, disc is too far behind you, and you should use a little bit more of a wide rail. Okay, so now from here, your hips are going to do a big lateral shift this way. Boom. That looks okay to you, probably, but it's not. There's not enough spin there. So because I can see that this hip is open and this hip is open, right? If you were to coil into your rear hip correctly, your crease, like the seam of your pants here, it's not really a seam, but where your pants bend when you turn backwards into your rear hip, if you put your hand on that line against your leg and then try to crush your hand by making your belly fold down towards your thigh, that is what hip coil is. That's the easiest way I can explain it. You're not doing that because this leg was bent a lot, and now it's opening up into this position with your toes back. Your leg is not contributing very much to your throw. So if you instead changed this step so that it was more toes sideways, got your knee to bend inward so that that hip crease would be much more closed. Now, like already, just imagine that this line is your leg. It looks like a more athletic position, right? Your knee is backwards. That's not an athletic position. If your knee is tucked forwards like this, then it is. Then you can get your hips involved in the throw a little more. So what you want to do is go from folded into this back hip crease to a very quick shift to folded into the front hip crease. And that change is going to happen while your front leg is at this angle. So you have to really stick on the ground here to hold this hip in place while this hip rotates around. This leg is then going to scoop the other way. So this is the trailing leg needing to go behind you that way is the most undercoached motion in disc golf that I'm aware of. All the top pros do it. All of the instructional videos don't point out how important it is. The leg going that way and being a counterweight is what slows down or stops or limits the rotation of your hips, which is what limits the rotation of your shoulders, which is what makes the disc eject quickly, right? If you take the whole torso and just spin it around with no stop point, you get rounding. When the hips stop because of the brace and the trailing leg being a counterweight over here, that's what makes the torso start to slow down so that the arm and the disc can accelerate and whip crack out in front. Kind of an advanced concept, but hopefully it makes sense. So how are we going to get there? We're going to get there by first understanding what you are doing. So watch your trailing leg. It scoots forward and then stops. So that tells me that you are planting in line. So I can't see that because the camera is too low to the ground. If the camera were up higher, looking down at your feet, I could tell where your feet angle is, where your feet's angled done B are at. But this one I can see is too far back. This one looks okay. But I can infer, because this leg goes straight forward, that your feet are in line here. So popping to an overhead view of the T-pad, you have a foot here and your trailing foot is here. That's not what I want. I want your trailing foot to be here, or it can be 45, doesn't really matter, but your brace foot needs to be here. So there's now a rail that your X step foot goes on, and there's a rail that your initial step and your plant step go on, and they never touch. Once you're into this step, or even the step before that, you need to have two distinctly separate rails. What that does is it gives you a third rail where your center of gravity tracks. So when you plant onto this plant step, your center of gravity keeps trying to go that way. It'll kind of bump into your plant step and stay there. But this leg, because it has momentum going forward on that track, will speed around this way. So it'll scoop and it'll rotate that way. It'll then bounce back and come this way again, but it needs to go that way first, because that's what limits your torso rotation, which is what makes the disc eject in the first place. So given you don't have any weight going behind you, you over rotate. So you just release the disc and your shoulders are almost open to the target already. We would want to see at the instant when the disc releases, which I can't catch because I don't have frame by frame scrubbing, but we would want to see your arm here and your chest at like that angle. So I'd still want to see a lot of your chest, and I don't see enough of your chest here. Pivoting on the heel looks good. Got that part. I think that's about all I had. So make sure the lateral hip shift is too much. You want the weight to stay back behind this brace longer. So you want all of your pivot to happen in one location in your hips. So you're in your back hip crease there, where I want it would be tighter if your toe was towards the camera. but that now you have this big lateral shift. So I'll go click pause, and your hips are going to move forward every time, right? We want to see a bigger pause where this leg stiffens up and keeps the hips right here while they spin. Look at Drew Gibson for that. He's a very good example of what that looks like. Not necessarily saying you should try to emulate his throw. I think Tristan Tanner is probably a lot better person for you to look at. I can link you to one of his videos. So make sure your brace is offset. You're shouldering it a decent amount still. So like what I mean by that is this is like a function of this position is that you were trying to push out of the ground on this leg, and because of this shoulder lean, you're trying to pull your torso back up that way to power the shot, and your shoulder gets a little bit shruggy there. Like that's not ideal, right? We want that shoulder to stay down, supported by the pec and the lat muscles in the back, and we want the shoulder to stay out of the way. The shoulder is not powering the throw. The hips behind the brace is what's powering the throw. So get your body to get rid of the idea of sending force energy into this elbow. That's not your elbow. Into your shoulder, and get it instead to think about using ground forces to stop the hips to get this leg to scoop the way that we want it to. The job of the shoulder is just to keep the elbow attached to the rotating torso. That's about it. Then a loose arm hinges at the elbow, and that's where we get all of our whip. I think that's about it. Yeah, so ask questions if any of that doesn't track, doesn't make sense. I think the changing the footwork so that your hips are smoother and you don't have that up and drop down into your X step thing is going to be big. Also shortening up this last step a little bit and making sure you have a good offset is also going to be key. So you don't need, the biggest mental shift I want you to make is you don't need a bunch of momentum from here. You should be able to take 2 steps, get into this position with a shorter last step and a bigger offset. Focus on coiling into that rear hip. I think those will help you get a lot better feel for the throw, because you're trying to muscle it just a little bit too much now, and your run up speed is stopping on the X step, so it's not really adding anything. It's just speeding up the throw and making everything a little tighter, a little harder to get your timing right. Yep. So ask questions if you got them. Good luck.